Om Ajnanatimirannasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Gurudev. Good morning. How is everybody? Good. Awake? Beautiful. So this morning I will be sharing from the very well-known Canto 10, chapter 80, verse 3. And for those of you that perhaps are new, Canto 10 is simply all about the Lord Krishna, and his relationship to the bhaktas, the devotees. And I chose to do this canto and this chapter specifically as it's the story of Sudama, Krishna's best friend, the humble and poor Brahmana, which Guruji is very often sharing this story, very, very often. And how many have noticed that when he shares this story, he's basically crying every single time? Have you noticed that? It's so beautiful, and yet he shares the same story every single time. But he's moved to tears, and this, of course, the story is very beautiful, right? And demonstrates this, I guess, aspect of humility on the spiritual path. But still, for me, I was like, wow, the fact that he's crying like this every single time, it really touched me. And for those of you that were here for New Year's, I was asked to read the Katha for Satyanarayana Puja on New Year's Day. And I was reading the story of Sudama and Krishna. And so I had my first experience reading it myself with all the devotees. And I remember thinking about Guruji, or not thinking about him, but seeing him within my heart, and the tears rolling from his eyes. And I myself started to cry while I was reading the story. And it was Govinda. It was a very beautiful, auspicious moment, let's say, because that day my life changed a lot. But anyway, this is why I chose to read from this today. Savakyayatasya gunan grinnite karocha takkarma karomanascha smarit vasantam stira jangameshu shrinito tat punya kata sakarnaha. Actual speech is that which describes the qualities of the Lord. Real hands are those that work for him. A true mind is that which always remembers him, dwelling within everything, moving and non-moving. And actual ears are those that listen to sanctifying topics about him. So before the story of Sudama and Krishna is told, it begins with a few verses of just being in this remembrance of listening to the glories of the Lord, which is the perfect preface for such a story. And I don't know if you noticed, but within this verse, you can hear the 9 forms of bhakti present, especially a few. Did you notice? How many of you know the 9 forms of bhakti? Yes? So let me read it again, and you let me know what 9 forms of bhakti you hear. Actual speech is that which describes the qualities of the Lord. Real hands are those that work for him. A true mind is that which always remembers him dwelling within everything, moving and non-moving. And actual ears are those that listen to sanctifying topics about him. Who wants to share? What did they hear? Smarana, yes, the constant remembrance, right? He says, always, a true mind is that which always remembers him. Mm-hmm. Any others? Kirtana, yes. I don't know who said it, but yes, exactly. Kirtana is to sing the glories or in other words, to share the glories or speak about the glories, which is actual speech that is describing the qualities of the Lord. And? Shravana, did I hear? Yes, Shravana. Beautiful. Actually, you can probably find more within this, but these were the three that really stood out to me and what I wanted to highlight. And surely the devotees here have heard this many times, the 9 forms of bhakti, but the first three are fundamental. They're fundamental. Shravana, Kirtana, Smarana, to listen to the glories of the divine, to sing the glories of the divine, and to constantly remember. And this, as a devotee, it should be on repeat, right? It should be on repeat within our daily life, And what I love that before the story of Sudama comes, this verse is here, and it's really reminding us the importance of being present in a way. And Guruji is constantly reminding us, especially recently, to be present, that Sri Hari is only now. I know you've heard it so many times now, we're all talking about it. But are we present? Are we here now? Like right now? That's the question. Because it's right now as I'm speaking and you're listening and we're remembering the glories of the divine that we can be with him. It's right now. It's not a later realization. And yet, it's very easy to want to think about the future, about, oh, Shivaratri night's coming and that's when I'm going to do my great tapasya. But what about right now? Do you have an intention for Shivaratri? Can we start right this very moment with your breath in this moment? And so with this verse, I felt like, oh, this is a nice window to talk about something Guruji has mentioned a few times. It sounds very mysterious, but in actuality, I mean, by his grace, we can experience this, and it is Sri Hari is the space between each breath. How many of you remember him saying this? Is it the first time some of you are hearing this? He said it also on New Year's Day. I don't know if anybody wrote it down because he said it in an even more specific way on New Year's Day. But he says, Sri Hari is the space between each breath. And automatically, the mind is like, what? No? What is that? That's where Sri Hari is? How do I go there? What's the space between each breath? What is the space between each breath? Well, it can be hard to detect such a subtlety, when we don't have this foundation of listening, glorifying, and remembering in our life. Oftentimes, we just jump from one thing to the other, or we are talking and chit-chatting and socializing and just, in a sense, wasting this opportunity to be in that space between each breath. You know, sound is super powerful. That's why we chant and sing together. But when we use the power of sound and speech to just socialize about random things, let's say, we kind of just leak away this very precious energy. opportunity to be within this space. And it reminds me of a verse in the Mukunda Mala, which is chanted here every night, where it said, by calling aloud the name of Lord Narayana, even the worst sinner is blessed with his desires. If only we had used the power of speech in this way, we would have saved ourselves from so many miseries. If only we had used the power of speech in this way. He knew something. He knew something. Govinda. And so, as I was thinking about this space between each breath, and another repeated message from Guruji recently, which is about micro disciplines. Who has been hearing that a lot from Guruji? Micro disciplines. Yes? No? Yes. He's been saying it a lot. That's what I'm saying. Shravana, listening. Sometimes the mind is like, Guruji said that already so many times. I know that, I do that. No, he's repeating it for a reason. Okay, so how can we put these things into practice? So micro-discipline, I'm going to share. It's an experiment. I've already been experimenting with it for the last few days. When we finish, a micro-discipline to engage with this space in between each breath, okay? But before I share about that, I wanted to share a story with Guruji. And oftentimes I'm talking about my experiences in the silence. I realize, wow, I really need to get some new experiences because I'm always talking about the silence, but I guess it's just, I love it so much and have received so much in that space. And after a silent retreat with Guruji, I was very blessed to walk with him, just on a little private walk around the forest. And at the end, we approached where everybody else was. And this was the last day of silence. Everybody had already finished the silence. And when we arrived, people were talking together, hanging out. And Guruji just looked super disappointed, like super disappointed. And he said, look at these people. They're already back to how they were. Chit-chatting. Gosh, if only they knew, if they committed to this practice, they could change their DNA. And he just looked me straight into the eyes with these, how many of you know those fierce, piercing eyes? It was a very powerful moment, one of the more powerful moments of my life. And to be honest, I wasn't surprised. Because of my experiences in the silence and how revolutionary it is. Even though the yogis, the saints, they've been talking about this forever. So it's not that it's revolutionary, it's just the truth. The power of silence, the power of stillness. And yet, oftentimes, we're too busy using the power of speech to scatter our minds, or we're thinking a lot about other things, the past, the future, instead of listening, Shravana, listening to what's in the very moment, and seeing where we can, Govinda, glorify Kirtana, and remember, Smarana, the Lord in that moment, but it only comes when we're able to listen. And I go back to the Bhagavatam verse. He's saying, like, real ears are those that hear. We have ears, but that doesn't mean that we're hearing, right? Guruji says that also a lot. So I was listening in South Africa to a lecture from Pandit Myron, and he said something that really stood out to me, and I felt like repeating it because it was also part of the inspiration to share this little micro-discipline with you. And that is, when we go to a satsang or a darshan or an event with the devotees, and we're sitting and we're listening, but then we get up and immediately walk away and just completely forget about it, or do something else, or start gossiping, or, getting lost in entertainment. What Myron said is, this is like an aprad. It's like an offense. It's guru aprad. And I was like, wow, I completely agree. And I cannot say that I'm very educated on what is specifically identified as guru aprad, but I did look it up after that. And I think that it does fit into that category, If we are listening to a satsang from Guruji and then we get up and we completely forget about it instantly, or we just start, socializing with people in an ordinary way, this is quite an offense to what he just gave, spent his time to give so much, repeat himself again and again and again. And so I feel like to really have this strong understanding that when he gives us something like this, we should do our very best in every moment to put it into practice. Otherwise, it's almost like an offense to him. But of course, he's just going to keep giving because he's unconditional love embodied, But it's like this subtle offense. No? It's interesting to look at it that way, right? Because of course, it's about timing, we're all doing our best, of course. But still, we gotta raise the standard a little bit with ourselves, because the mind, it needs a little more discipline than we might think. I know for myself, I've been on the path for a very long time, and still this mind, jumps around. And that's why constantly listening, constantly glorifying, constantly remembering. In the Bhagavad Gita, I say my favorite word is constantly, because oftentimes we think, at a certain point something will click and I'll just be present all the time and realize, no, you have to constantly meet the Lord in your relationship. When we say do our effort, I think it really just means meet the Lord in that relationship constantly. You have to show up constantly, no matter what. So, that being said, now I would like to share this little micro-discipline, but how does the space between each breath relate to this? Well, if you think about, now we have morning prayers and we're going to go to breakfast, right? Maybe some people are fasting, but let's say we're here, we go to breakfast. Well, this is point A, the temple. Breakfast, point B. What's in between? It's a transition. It's kind of like a little space between each breath. Okay? So I told you I would give you something for that. It's not going to be like you enter the breathless state like a yogi, but just in a practical way. We go from point A to point B, and there's a space. So let's be present within that space. It's like being present within the space between each breath. Okay? So instead of leaving prayers and forgetting about everything instantly and running to your next destination, try to soak it in a little bit, just for another minute or two, and be still, be silent. As Guruji says, soak your mind, absorb your mind in the satsang. So just as a way of training the mind to not jump immediately, the first step, just soak it in. Remind yourself, I need to soak this in a little bit longer. And then, what's the next thing we have to do? We have to get up, move our body, to walk to the next destination. But before we get up, in the ashram especially, we have a physical tool to help us be present. What is that physical tool? Yes, japa mala. Dun, dun, dun. This is not new information, by the way. It's just a new way of explaining what Guruji has already said. But do we really value the japa mala? Yeah, it's the most amazing tool to keep us present in the space between each breath with the divine name. It's really the divine name that helps us ultimately, right? But we need several different tools and reminders. So the next thing we do, we grab our japa mala bag and we start to chant. And then we get up and we start to take steps. So in Babaji Surya Namaskar, we call it a moving prayer, a physical moving prayer. Well, why is it only when we're doing Babaji Surya Namaskar? Why isn't it now? How you're sitting, how you're listening, and then how you get up and leave the temple. Human beings are fascinating. We are super graceful and super awkward and clumsy, especially with our body. You can see the state of our mind by the way we're moving. So if we just jump and then we're running and then we're knocking into people, oh, sorry, you can see it's a reflection of where you're at. Are you present or not? So that's the next step. So we've said 3. You soak it in, then you carry it. You carry that with the Japamala, and then you walk with it. Actually, I mentioned the Mukunda Mala. In the Mukunda Mala, the very first verse is about King Kulashekara encouraging all the people to take one physical step, literally, towards Lord Ranganath as a symbolic start, to the day. So we can take this inspiration, and when we take our first step, when we get up to leave, we have the mala, where we have the teaching or whatever we received in mind, and we are present in our body. And then we start to walk. Then we start to walk, and we keep chanting. We have our mala bag, And then eventually what happens? We bump into people. They know us. They want to talk. So, what do? We don't want to be awkward and weird and just blurt out something from the satsang. We can still have a basic social etiquette with each other, but try to just share something that you received from the satsang or the darshan or whatever it was, and encourage a more elevated conversation. Okay, try your best not to get lost in the chit chat, like Guruji said. When the silence broke, everyone just went straight back to normal. Okay, it's incredible how quickly it happens. It's incredible. So when you go to your next destination, especially, I've noticed in myself, Bhajan Cafe, we know, it's amazing, please go. But also, that's where the chit-chat starts, that's where we start to, indulge a little bit. Of course, it's all made with love there, and I love it. But maybe there is a good place to practice. What can I share that I learned today from a satsang? It really just takes a second to bring us back to the moment, to the Lord. And that's the last step. Come back. Just come back. Guruji says that often. When the mind goes, because it's inevitable, we will forget. But just come back. Just come back. If you don't have your Japamala out in regular life, of course, it's not the same. But the moment that you notice, oh, I drifted again, that's a success. That's a success. When you notice that you've drifted, that means that you're more aware. Govinda. So, but just tell yourself that it's okay when you forget, but just come back. Just come back. And these are the 5 sort of points that I wanted to share with you today, to come back to that space between each breath, to see the transitions of life as where the real practice begins, the real yoga, the real bhakti. It's not just when you come to Shivaratri and you've got your special tilak on and then you're in the vibe. No. That's beautiful, and of course it creates stronger devotional impressions inside of us for later, but let us value these transitions even more. Tell your mind it's even more important than when I sit in the satsang, because that's where I have to put in the teachings, whether you're in the ashram or in daily life. Okay, so Guruji has mentioned that in the traditional Gurukul system, it's the first 7 days of focused discipline where then the Guru can see, okay, I can give them more. And then after 30 days, transformation begins. After 1 year, the person's unrecognizable. And after 12 years, that's 1 spiritual year. So if you can practice this for 7 days, try. How many are willing? 7 days. Who remembers the 5 points? Who remembers them? I hope they were recording this so we can send it out. Soak it in. Yeah? You just soak it in. Then you carry it, the japa bag. Then you walk with it. You're focused on how you're moving to your next destination. And then? Yes, speaking about it. Speaking about it, and then? Come back. Come back when you forget. 5 things. If you want, you can come to me, I can send it to you. And if you're willing to try this out for 7 days, see what happens. See if you're a little bit more present with the Lord in your life in every single moment. So, as a closing, with Shivaratri coming, he is the perfect example for this kind of discipline and constant absorption and stillness and silence. So may Shiva, Lord Shiva, bless us all with this ears that actually hear, like in this Bhagavatam verse, and the ability to always listen deeply, always glorify and remember the Lord, and use the power of speech in the way that glorifies the Guru and the Lord. Jai Gurudev.